What is going on, my game design gurus, and welcome to the Level Design Lobby. Hey everyone, thank you for joining me, your host, Max Pears, for the 17th episode, time is flying when you're having fun, of the Level Design Lobby. And today is a brilliant one because I have a good friend on here to talk about their game and the indie process of making games, Paris Stalker.
Hello!
Yeah, Paris, yeah.
The crowd goes wild.
What people don't realise is this is recorded in front of a live studio audience, so, now they do. Now they're aware.
Oh yeah, everyone on my street, they were all standing on ladders and peering from my window.
They just want to get a glimpse of you, man, that's all. You're a big,
He does.
So without this going further sexual, we'll continue on. Yeah. So tell the people about yourself, mate. Introduce you as a game developer that you are now, man.
Of course. Right, well, I'm an indie developer. I went to university, same one as Max, to do game design. I guess I could have gone into industry normal ways, and it's not that I will never do that, but I wanted to give it a shot. I had less commitments of going independent. Got quite a strong vision, I think. A lot of different things I want to try, and I'm not so interested in the sort of direction of AAA at the moment. Not that I think it's wrong or anything, but it's just not what I want. I just recently released my first PC game, Ersatz, which we're going to be talking about, I suppose. And there's a lot I would like to, a lot of directions I want to go from here, obviously. But I'm excited to just sort of get stuck in and actually start talking with people a bit more about what I do and what other people do, and being more involved in the community and things, because I've been quite isolated for a while. It's good.
Yeah, well, no, it's good to have you, and I think it's always great to hear from different people with different views, because as you mentioned there, you chose indie for a couple of reasons. You wanted to go your own path, you had your own vision on video games and the games that you wanted to produce, and I think that's great, because I think some people aren't aware of the option of indie. Obviously, as you know yourself, it comes with the amount of risks, but it comes with its own amount of rewards as well. And can you maybe just say what made you choose indie? You touched briefly upon it then in the introduction, maybe, but what was it that made you go, all right, this is for me, this is the way that I'm going to go about making video games?
Well, I mean, even when I was at university, I was already sort of it was already something that was sitting in the back of my mind the whole sort of time I was going through it. Obviously there's a sort of slight ego element to it, of wanting to have more control over what I was doing. Even if it wasn't necessarily in a leadership position, but just actually feeling like I played more of a part in that. And because particularly what I see as great in games, what I'm most interested in, doesn't tend to line up with a lot of what is the big budget stuff, which tends to sort of be focused on quite a cinematic presentation and things like that. I'm more interested in some of the granular sort of mechanical elements of games and things like that. And how they can sort of relate sort of certain emotions and things. But probably the actual key moment that actually made me decide full on to go indie was when we were at Dare to Be Digital, me and you, and this competition, we're competing for a BAFTA and stuff like that. We had to make a game over 9 weeks, and it was really intense. We met lots of industry. Yeah, you remember, right?
I remember.
I could forget. And we met lots of great industry people, as I'm sure you remember, as well. But the particular moment, the sort of turning point for me, was when we were talking to Andy Williams, and he was obviously a lead designer at Ubisoft Reflections at the time. And he said to me, look, Paris, I could get you a job at Ubisoft Reflections. I'm sure that would be no problem. But you have to understand that you probably will only ever be a cog in the machine in the sort of grand picture of things, because I'd already sort of expressed some of the things I've just said. And that, to me, was sort of screw it. I'm just going to give it a shot, because 10 years from now, I don't know where I'm going to be. I might have a family or something, so, and commitment starts seeping in. It becomes a lot more difficult. And particularly from my experience over the last few years, or it's been 4 now, I guess, of making games on my own, I definitely feel like I made the right decision for me personally. It's because it's hard, especially because I have to work as well. So I'm trying to juggle things, and you can often feel guilty when you're not doing anything, even just to enjoy yourself for just a moment. To ironically just play a game can make you feel like bad.
Yeah, I know that feeling, man. It's a haunting feeling. I think like it sticks with all of us. When you're doing something, despite like you're saying, like you're playing games because not only do you love them, you don't want to lose that passion, but you're also learning from them subconsciously or consciously.
Yeah.
You feel so guilty when you're like, oh no, I should be doing stuff, but yeah, I think that's just the sad part sometimes about it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's something you learn to deal with, and you get better at managing and stuff. And you have to find your own schedule, something that works for you. And sometimes everything has to shift because stuff happens. About a year ago now, I went through a pretty tough period after I've moved cities. And I didn't do anything for 8 months. That was really hard, because one of the reasons I want to make games as well is because I love creating, full stop. And I've always done something, whether it be making music or art, or and have that 8 months period where for the first time in my life I didn't have any drive at all to do anything, but to know that I needed to do something. That it was necessary for me to be content and happy. That was a really hard period, but I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot about myself. So if you're willing to take the risk, if you want to take the risk to go indie, it's a good thing to do. But just know that you need support. You need the support of your friends, your family, and you need to constantly reevaluate yourself. And there's going to be some really low lows and really high highs. And that's true in the industry in general, I think, to some extent, obviously. All the crunch and stuff in AAA in particular. But.
Yeah, man, I think that's just bang on what it is. Like, just remember, people, that there isn't just going down the AAA route, or that there is other options. And like you said, is it works out for you, and you're enjoying doing it. And I think that's the most important thing, is because at the end of the day, we make because we want to make. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you're doing it again because you want to do it is, to me, it's the best thing that anyone can do, is they do it because they want to do it. So I think that's brilliant. And it's great to also hear that, and I think it's great for the listeners to hear that as well, that there is other options and there is ways to still create and do things, and how important it is just to sit down and do it sometimes,
Yeah, absolutely.
No, man. So before we move into things, I want to ask a couple more questions before we get onto your game, mate.
Yeah, no worries.
These questions are so what games first got you into wanting to make games? Which games inspired you to get into the industry first of all?
That's a nice and easy one. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's weird. I think I got given a Game Boy when I was about 4. And I'd been around babysitters' houses and played, Sonic on the Mega Drive and stuff like that. So I was always interested in some way. But it wasn't until I was about 6 when, I was 6, because for my 6th birthday, just before my 6th birthday, my dad had taken me to Sega World when that was still a thing. In London. And we were just on our way back, and it was a rainy day. And then he just had a conversation with my mum and my sister, and they found out that they weren't going to be at home. So he was like, oh, well, I've got something to show you. So I get back, and then he gets out this N64. I had no idea what the hell it was. I didn't know anything about any consoles, really, to be honest. He sticks on Super Mario 64, and I've gone from looking at, basic sprite stuff to full-fledged 3D, and not just that, one of the most perfect, first-time executions of such a thing, one could witness. And it just blew my mind. And then later that year, after I'd actually got the N64 for my birthday, not just a little early birthday treat, I played Ocarina of Time. And again, that was really formative in making me go, wow, these are amazing. I want to have something to do with this. And from that point on, there's plenty of milestone games and things that, opened my mind in certain ways, but those definitely were probably the two that sort of kick-started it. It's pretty cliche. They are pretty cliche, but, they are what they are.
To me, like, that always shows the strength of the game, because it was Metal Gear Solid 1 that got it for me, and again, it's a very popular game, and others will mention it as their starting point and interest as well. But that just speaks numbers and volumes for the game that we see. Like, you say it's cliche, but again, it just shows the power of those specific games. And I think you're right, bang on with the whole the masterpiece with the 2D game of Mario, and how they got it so spot on as one of their first attempt. I mean, Donkey Kong and so forth before it, but like you said, to witness those masterpieces coming out is just it's a crazy thing, and it's an amazing thing because it inspired you to get onto here, man. So I think that's brilliant. And then the next question, which will be an easy one for you.
Yeah.
What are you playing at the minute? What's got you hooked right now?
Well, rather ironically, I suppose I've been playing Mario Odyssey.
Nice.
Yeah, I've not played, not put too much time into it yet because having to work and stuff as well. But really loving it so far. It's proving to be a lot of things that I've wanted since Super Mario 64, without it just being a sort of a direct sequel. It's something that I've always admired about Nintendo when they're on firing on all cylinders, when the ability to take something that's quite familiar but constantly surprise you and interest you in all kinds of ways. Other than that, I'm also playing. So I've sort of technically in the middle of City Skylines, trying that out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played much of that. I haven't played a game like that in a long time. The problem I find is that a lot of the games I'm really interested in at the moment require a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know how to manage that. I think they're the main things at the moment.
Nice.
Yeah, but there's particularly in the indie scene, there's a lot that I want to try out from the last 5 years. Really, I've been quite disappointed in myself.
So much to catch up on in the indie scene. Like, I've got Owl Boy isn't like the top of my list. That and Shovel Knight.
Yeah. I played Owlboy for around about Christmas last year. Yeah,
there's, like I say, there's just so much going on, and like this year for AAA games has also been great. Like Switch's launch has been pretty decent.
I mean,
this year, like I got Hellblade to get as well because I hear amazing things about that.
Yeah, very good things. Yeah,
and then I've just picked up Nier Automata.
Yeah.
I stumble on that word every time.
I'm still not sure if it's automata or automata, but yeah.
It's I've only and again like you, it's like struggling not to play because occasionally I'll slip in like Splatoon 2 or Overwatch, just slip them in for a quick game, and suddenly that game can turn to 20 games.
Yeah,
and next thing you know, damn it.
That issue. Yeah, I mean, just particularly now. I mean, when we were at university, and you might not agree with me on this one, but I felt that generation of consoles that we were in at the time, with the PS3, the Xbox 360, and the Wii, it had a lot of really interesting games, but it was so overwhelmingly homogenous in terms of design, in terms of visual presentation. Most things fell into a very small bracket of games. And that chase for the money, because games have become so expensive, and it's so refreshing and exciting and invigorating that over the last 3 or 4 years, just games have got so much more exciting and colourful again. That there's just so many different genres and different styles. Okay, AAA can still be a bit much sometimes. Everything's trying to be open world, all that stuff, but overall it's so much more exciting and fresh again, and it's not, everything doesn't have to be this dark grey gritty brown sort of mature in quotation marks game,
post-apocalyptic. I was thinking back the other day back to PlayStation 1 PS2 era. I just remember the breadth of games. I'm not saying every game on those consoles were good, because they were not, but do you remember now the only like kart kind of game really is Mario Kart.
Right.
But you used to have the crash racing.
Yeah.
You had these other ones that I remember. Like PS2 used to have like these giant robots versus monsters. And again, I'm not saying these games were great, but like the diversity of them was I agree. Like especially compared to the PS3 generation, it was a lot more prevalent. And I think you're right to see the boom back, especially with the indie market. And like I said, mainstream is kind of, it's still up in the air where it's going to go right now. There's a lot of talks of where directions it's going with microtransactions and open world. But yeah, no, I agree. Like, it's great to see a lot more, and also consoles embrace it a lot more because, before the Switch, Nintendo just weren't having it in terms of indie. But now,
they were doing absolute bollocks. Like, to be quite frank, everyone.
That's why we get you on here, mate, because it's just good to hear some that. But yeah, no, man, I agree, and it's just kind of like, yeah. But enough of this, because we can talk all day and all episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
But we're here for one really reason, and that's to talk about your game, which recently just launched, and you recently just what is the word I'm looking for? You recently showed it, but there was a better way of saying
Exhibited.
showed that I was looking for. Thank you. It was on the tip of my tongue, but nowhere near. You recently exhibited it, and tell us about where you showed it and what was that experience like for you, mate. Also, tell us what the name of your game, and break that down first before we talk about that experience.
Okay, so yeah, it's called Ersatz. It's a 2D hardcore action platformer with rhythm elements. So the music dynamically progresses as you progress through the levels, and various elements of the game, such as hazards or obstacles, boss attacks, will be on the beat of the music. And your controller vibrates to the beat and stuff like that. So it's sort of surrounding around this sort of slightly synesthetic element to the game. And I exhibited at Play Expo. So this was after launch, but someone pointed me towards it, and I thought I'd give it a go. They were doing some free indie spaces. It was a great experience, to be honest. I learnt so much, and in some respects, a lot of what I was sort of feeling was like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. But rather than it setting me back, rather than it me being like, oh, I've messed up, it was more like, oh, yeah, now I know what I'm doing. Now next thing I do is going to be even better. And I'm an indie, and so I don't have a full testing studio working for me, testing things. So I learnt particularly a lot in terms of like what changes to make to some of the earlier sections of the game in particular, and tutorialization, because if there's one thing that I think all designers struggle with on some level, it's their greater battle. If any of them is definitely trying to make sure that players understand like the rules of the game like actually clearly without it being some massive chore or struggle. It's so hard to get that right, no matter how many times you do it.
Yeah, man, I completely agree, and I think a lot of designers fall into that trap of, thinking, oh man, this is really complex, so I'm just going to write a novel that the players have to read through. Right. And I think that is like, well, I mean, like if anyone's read any of my articles or listened to this show for a while, they should know that I'm not a fan of just like, just putting a wall of text. We came to buy a game. The whole point, the main selling point of a game is the interactivity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now I'm reading a book. Like they said, no one has, like, we've seen great examples of tutorials, but no one's got it nailed down perfectly. And because each game is different, you have to think about how you're going to do it your way. And that's the challenge each time, as you're saying, is every game is different. And because of that, you trying to get your head around about how you show your work is another challenge within itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Players, it's almost like they're trying to shoot themselves in the foot half the time. You give them the text that they need, but they won't read it. They'll skip it. People will often won't read things unless they're sort of absolutely forced to in some way. And yeah, I very much believe in interactive tutorials where possible.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, I want to give a shout out for your game, because obviously I've played it. I've bought it, so please do again buy this game, supporting my man Paris, and it's a good game and it's very much worth checking
Thank
out.
you.
And one thing I noticed is you had like kind of two tutorials, if you will, in this game. One which was like a kind of an isolated one, and the other one that was in the game. And I thought that was a really nice way of, because the second, I don't want to use the word tutorial because I don't think it is the second one, but it's more of like an interactive play.
Yeah.
And I think that was done really nicely because, again, there's signs and it's not, here it is, it's just the button and you go from there. And I think that was done really well because you had the space to learn, you know. So I thought that was really well done, mate. I thought it was honestly really
thanks,
well.
man. But, you know, like, this is it, really. You know, it's like I didn't start there. And that didn't start off that way. If I go right back, it was just the level which had the signs in it. And at first they had actions written on them, like it would say dash rather than have the button prompt. And that was around about sort of like, it's when I was going through Greenlight. Steam Greenlight back when that was a thing, and
that's amazing. That's not a thing now, isn't it?
Somehow replaced it with something even worse, apparently. So, but yeah, it was when I was going through that, and I had some very small time YouTuber do a little video on it, and he played it, and he had a couple of like criticisms, and one of the things is he said, "Oh, these should be button prompts and stuff like that," and what I was realizing as well is obviously because it was text and stuff, people weren't making a connection with what they're supposed to be doing, and if they didn't already understand what button to press for their action, it wasn't really helping them at all. So because before this point as well, I just used to have a thing that would come up when you tried to start the first level, which would tell you like the basic rules of the game, but again, people just generally wouldn't read it. So then I changed those to the button prompts, and the button prompts change if you change the key bindings, which is also important, and obviously whether you're using a keyboard or controller, blah blah blah. And then even then, you know, it was after a while. It's particularly with regards to how some of the things. The game's not very complicated, but it's surprisingly hard to explain some of the subtleties. Well, not subtleties, but some of the simplicity, some of the rules for how some of the simple things work, without sort of having something that's sort of perhaps separate from the main game. And that's when I ended up coming up with a separate tutorial, which I then made auto boot when the first time you play the game, so that people had to get through it. And it was then that I could ensure certain things were getting tested. But then even then, you know, I went to Play Expo, and there were little tiny things that people weren't doing. Like I have these pads that you can slam down on and they heal you at the cost of time. But because of the way I originally implemented the tutorial, you could just sort of run over them and then go straight to the next sort of like little objective thing to end the tutorial. So then I had to force the player to slam on it, and then I told them, because also another thing that would happen is that even when I told people, oh, I'll slam on that to heal, even though some text would come up just above the character saying +1 HP, +2 time, people weren't then making a connection, oh, I need to slam multiple times if I want to fully heal. So then I had to make it so that not only did you have to slam on this pad, you had to make sure your health was completely restored before you could move on. And that way I could make sure that everyone actually understood that mechanic. So it's little weird things like that.
I think that's a really good point to touch upon there, man. And I just wanted to also say something about something you said there. It's like, it's not a complex game, and I agree. But you've got such like nice nuances that it's a tough one to master. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, like I suck at your game. I'm just really bad at it. I've never been great at these sort of things. But again, like even just playing it, I can see, okay, if I was better, I know the path and routes I would take. Mm-hmm. You know, I know how, right, okay, if my reaction time was better and like all this, I'd double dash here and then cut it mid-action and slam, you know. So
yeah.
I agree, like it's a simple game, but it's got that complexity of mastering it. And I think that's what's great is, you know, I completed the first level. Yeah. And I went back and I definitely did it quicker the second time round. Mm-hmm. Because again, I was noting this stuff down as I was coming through. Yeah. But no, man, I think it was really interesting how you were saying with the health pad thing. So I think it's an interesting one. It's a great way, again, sometimes how you you have to make the player stop and just force them to do things. Like 9 times out of 10, players aren't too fussed with it if it's fun doing it.
Yeah, well, that was exactly what the idea behind it, because at least it's interactive and it's not a lot of text. So it's trying to like balance it so that they have to do something, that they have to take note of something, but in a way where they don't feel interrupted too much.
Yeah, definitely. So one of my questions about your tutorial then, because like you say, when you first boot up, it's this kind of isolated event of the tutorial.
Mm-hmm.
What made you choose to do like an isolated, separate sort of thing compared to like doing a tutorial level, if you will? Because I know the beginning of the first level has that sort of tutorial-ish vibe to it.
Yeah.
What made you go, right, I'm going to do some like a whole level from this, not doing a tutorial level build-up? Like, what was your design philosophy behind that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I was talking to someone the other day about this, and that perhaps the game is hard, right? I know that. It was intentionally so, and it's very hard to get that difficulty right. And perhaps it wasn't necessarily the right decision to sort of combine the two so thoroughly, because it does make that first level quite can make it quite a long little slog, depending on how good you are at it. I'm not sure if it was the wrong or the right decision, but the thought behind it was because of the nature of the game and in terms of what I wanted to get into it, and have as like I'm working on my own, so I have to do everything, including the music and everything. And the more levels I create, potentially the more sort of aesthetics and things like that I had to design. And part of that was like, well, if I have a tutorial level and that's one of the 8 levels that I'm thinking of doing, then it's sort of like the game sort of like loses some of its like potential to expand upon itself enough, because obviously as you get deeper into the game can sort of get more and more complex in terms of mechanics and stuff. And so I decided that I was willing to sort of make a bit of a statement and say this game is hard off the bat, and to allow people to sort of come up a little bit against the wall early on, so that when they overcame that, they would sort of like feel accomplished and keep pushing forward. And the funny thing is I think once people have beaten the 3rd level, they could go back to that first level and it will be so easy to them. Like that, it's almost funny. It is actually really easy when you know what you're doing, and sort of once you've got sort of familiar with the movement and things. I tried to balance that out with, because the game was actually harder to start with, and I tried to balance that out by basically making it so that the game, you don't get punished too heavily for game overs. You only get that time penalty, and then if you fall into a pit, now you go back to a recent sort of checkpoint. And so it then becomes more about, okay, well, you can fail loads and loads and loads. You can take as long as you want, but at some point you're going to have to learn not to do that. But you don't have to do that now. You can just keep going up until a point. You can actually get it all out to level 7, and then once you've done level 7, you have to get a minimum grade on the previous levels.
Oh, really? Okay. So I said I still think I'm not at level 7 or 8 yet, but
no, it's fine. Yeah, you have to get a C grade minimum.
That's what I like. That I think that's a very smart idea. I think that's really smart there, mate. But it's like I said, like after I completed the first level, I didn't get a C grade, but I was closer to it than the abysmal E I got at the beginning. So like I can see that once again, because you can see those paths laid out, if you will. You can see, like I was waiting for these platforms to come, which, as you said, they're playing in the beat, and then I was just looking as I was waiting. One of the times I died, and I was like, what the F am I waiting for? and I just started to dash it because I saw again how they moved, and if I saved enough dashes that I could clear the amount. So no, man, I think like even if I like what you say with level 3, but even after level 1, I think you can get better from it. Like I said, it's a simple game, but it's hard to master, and that's what I think is really smart about Ersatz. And I just want to ask, like, where did the name come from? Because it's not like a name that I've heard of or anything like relating to anything that I've heard. So like, where did that come from?
So it's actually originally a German word, but it's one of those German words that technically is used in English, but you just don't really hear it very often.
Okay.
It means like a knockoff, like a cheap knockoff type thing. Yeah, right. Which I guess I realised after the fact sort of sounded like a statement on the game, but that's not the idea. It's more to do with like the sort of the narrative and stuff that's sort of buried in some of the secret messages and sort of just general tone of the game and stuff.
That was the next question I want to move on and ask you about, because I know talking to you through a bit of production and stuff, each of these levels kind of reflected a certain emotion, and so how was that? So what were the emotions that you drew from, and how is it turning them into levels? Like, what was that like as an experience for you, man?
Yeah, so it's not emotions, it's functions of life.
Oh, sorry.
So, yeah, that's all right. So yeah, there's 8 functions of life recognised in science: growth, regulation, or otherwise known as homeostasis, nutrition, respiration, reproduction, excretion, transport, and synthesis. They're sort of like physical functions, if you were. And like the idea behind that was I really believe that like if you have a sort of like a strong central like focus, a theme, a vision behind any piece of design, you can sort of tie everything together in a really nice way, and it gives it sort of a sort of a consistent tone and feeling to it. Yeah,
man, I completely agree. Like that's sometimes what I feel. A lot of people, they just jump in, like just especially starting up. Oh, I'm going to make a combat game, or I'm going to make a racing game, but there's no like underlying like tone or feeling or emotion.
Yeah.
That, and I think a lot of it's just because they want to mimic games they're fans of, which again is a great starting point. But as you said, I completely agree. There should be something tying all this stuff together in a way, something that encourages your expression through it.
Exactly. I mean, the game was like really heavily. I'm a huge fan of Res. It's a crazy sort of trance shooter. It's the only way I can describe it. Man. And I love how like they use sort of subtle thematic elements and stuff to sort of add more to it. And there are a million indie platformers out there. There are a dime a dozen, and I felt that if mechanics didn't just exist because they existed, but because they sort of like tied in thematically beyond just the sort of aesthetic, then like I could create something with a bit more substance, something a bit more tangible, something that people who it really clicked with would sort of like actually have something to grab hold on and sink their teeth into. And so that that those functions they affect the visuals. So the first one is growth, so it's a forest, but then it's also the level mechanics. So I've got plant platforms that move on the beat. The second boss is a larger version of the smaller enemies, and then the actual boss itself, the actual boss mechanics in particular. I try to tie into that. So the first one's a plant. You've got to grow it before you can start attacking it. I really liked that one. I thought it was a very smart way of doing it. But god damn it pissed me off when I kept dying and I had to regrow it, because I was like, for fuck's sake, I don't want to have to grow it to die to it yet again. But no, I thought that was a really good idea in terms of triggering a boss fight, because 9 times out of 10 of a boss fight you just walk straight into it. So it was because at first I was kind of unsure, because the setup was of a boss battle encounter in terms of the layout, but I was kind of like, oh man, like, am I growing this to help me get out of here, and then it revealed itself. And again, I really did like that, mate. So really well done on that one. That was really nice. I thought that was a really good one. Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you. Yeah, so like to give another example of like one of the later levels, for example, so like nutrition, the third one, set in a desert sort of theme, and I for the actual boss, like it's so the mini boss is there's basically these little like things called horror size, and I've based them all off like a different function of like the Egyptian hierarchy.
Okay.
And you know, it's very subtle, and most people aren't going to get that until they see like the enemy names like at the end kind of thing. But the mini boss is called a Horusai Pharaoh. It says that obviously above the health bar, and it's this big fat bugger, like he's been sort of like sitting on his throne for too long and eating loads of food and stuff like that. But then once you beat it, it flies away, and then when you progress to the level a little bit more, you see it's sort of flying away again, but then it's being chased by a bird, and then when you finally get to the end, you see this like the actual boss, and it's eating the boss that was from the mini boss, and then throughout the battle it will try and eat like other little enemies that if you can destroy, because if you don't do that, then it will eat them and heal. So it ties into that nutrition aspect. So it's like it's trying to like give it a bit more flavour than just, because everyone's played a platform, particularly, your forest level, desert level, ice level, blah, 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 blah. That's not new or interesting of itself. But if I could like make the mechanics and like the theming of it like a bit different, I thought it could be like something a bit more interesting to see and just to play and even just to make.
Because so like that must be more engaging for you to make, especially. Like I know he's saying like it's maybe better for people to play, but for you to make as well, I think it must have been really fun to go, right, okay, growth or eating and then trying to figure out how do you show that, because visually I think you can show that quite well, but through mechanics I think that's the most interesting thing on how people do that. And I think that must have been fun for you to do that.
In some weird ways I think it makes the process easier, because you've got something that you can always look back to. It's like your design document almost. It's like you go, right, well, what's the point of this level? And then you so I need enemies for this, but what do the enemies need to sort of, what makes them fit into this theme and in multiple ways, and it gives you a sort of a jumping off point to start coming up with ideas and variations and things that. See, it's not just like, well, okay, it's another boss, here's another load of patterns. It's like there's something a bit more going on that makes it like feel different from the other ones. I tried to make each boss have its own sort of like thing going on, its own sort of style of arena, its own way that you have to beat it, so that it doesn't get boring. It's not the longest game in the world. If you can blast through it in an hour if you're really good, but like nobody's going to do that first time. But it's possible. But you still want to have variety and stuff, to test the mechanics in different ways.
Yeah, man. No, I think there's a lot of credit to you there, mate, for doing that. And I think you're right. It becomes fun to design in that way, and also for you to express your mechanics in another way, which I think is brilliant. There's another thing I really want to give props for, because if you guys aren't following Paris on Twitter or Ersatz on Twitter, you're recently doing, while we're recording this, like small reasons on why to play.
Yeah.
And then you've got like you're demonstrating small things that you do. Like the first one was if you leave your character still, he's in rhythm, tapping in rhythm with the game and the music.
Yeah, little odd animations.
Yeah, and like I don't think many games do like cool idle animations as much as they used to. So I think that's a really nice one. But there's one that I thought was great. Because it was contrast to one of my favourite games, which is Ico.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do when it comes to the saving game, because there's not much music playing except in kind of key pivotal moments. But when it comes to saving it plays this absolutely beautiful song called Heal. And you kind of do the opposite, which I thought was really, really nice, where you pause the menu and there is no music.
Yeah, I thought that was important.
No, I thought it was a really smart design choice. And is there anything that made you choose to do that?
Well, a few reasons. Like, I really like the contrast, because the game's like quite noisy otherwise. It's such a musical focus. but also there's an element as well that like if you're pausing a game, you might be because you need to sort of get up and do something or talk to someone or something, and it can be quite annoying. I'm sure we've all played a game where there's some really annoying short loop for the pause menu that drives you insane while you're like making a cup of tea or like something like that. Like you've left it on for just a little bit too long because you know, and you're like, shut up. So yeah, sometimes it's as simple as that, but yeah, it tends to be a few different things, reasons why I do that. And one of the other ones the first one I actually did for that tiny reasons thing was when you're in a menu and you at the top of a menu and you want to go to the bottom and you push up and it just takes you straight to the bottom and vice versa. I think it's little things like that that can drive me absolutely mad in a game. Like, you know, it doesn't matter how good it is. It's like, oh god, how could they miss this? They've made 300 hours of content, all this crazy mechanics, but you can't go to the bottom of the menu. I have to scroll all the way.
I think
3 seconds of my life gone.
I think Zelda Breath of the Wild does that, where like you know when you get your Link's character menu and you go from left to right. If you try to go the other way.
Yeah,
you can't do it, and that was an instant like frustration. I was like, really? Like,
yeah, I mean, I loved that game, but some of the UI stuff, like I thought of a few things they could have done to make that better, and it was frustrating. Like, and some of them didn't really become apparent until later in that game, because like when you start to have loads and loads of weapons, for example, then it takes like an age to sort of cycle through all your weapons because they're in a linear line. Like, why is this not a radius? Like,
oh man, like I mean, I struggle to find the big tree to give your seeds to because he moves around, and I can't remember.
First couple of times,
and I can't remember where he is, and I got like 20 seeds, and I'm like, god damn it, I can't remember where he said he was going. So
I'll give you a hint for a price
for loads of your seeds. But no, man, I agree. Like those little things can make a huge difference. So hats off to paying attention to them, man. I think it's important to look at those little things as well. So yeah, dude.
I mean, it's as I say, I think it's the difference between like a decent game and this is a good game. And I'm not saying that Ersatz is a good game, like lo and behold me to say something like that about something I worked on myself.
I'm kind of awesome, in case you didn't realise.
But the idea was to try and make it as close to one as I possibly could, like regardless of whether I met that or not. That's up to the players to decide. But like that was the idea behind it anyway.
Yeah, man. No, I think that's spot on. And I think that's again one of the reasons why we all create is to make something special and to make the best that we can. But how was the experience for you then when it was presenting the game at this expo? Like, what was that like for you? And you said that you learned some things on where to improve upon, and you've just been recently releasing updates. So just tell us about that experience, because for me, working at AAA, occasionally we get to go to these events and, it's very interesting, but we don't always get to have proper feedback sometimes when you're AAA compared to, as an indie. What was What was that like for you?
I know what you mean. Well, that's the thing. I definitely realised I should be doing it a lot sooner, basically. I had a tendency to sort of see a lot of. Sometimes it looks like there's just a lot of people in the indie community that just seem to do nothing but game jams and like hang out and go to exhibitions, and it's like, are you actually making a game at some point somewhere in here? And I think I let that put me off too much, because both times I've been to an event with my game, I've met someone really great. Like both times I've made a really good friend. Someone, one of which I might even be working with and stuff like that. But beyond that, it was just sort of like, okay, there are people like that at these events, but nothing can give you the kind of feedback that you can get from real people. And then even just like, particularly when you're indie, you need a sort of level of support that you might not have, and meeting other developers and stuff and people who the players directly who are like giving you support, and like when people say these ridiculously nice things to you, it just sort of gives you that last bit of energy you need sometimes to get over the next hurdle and to push you forward, so you don't feel so like alone.
Yeah, man. I think that's a really nice point, because sometimes the internet is filled with a lot of hate. And
it can be filled with a lot of love too, but nothing, for most people, nothing can replace like a real sort of physical sort of meeting of someone. And that's not to like, you know, poo-poo on anyone who's had like real meaningful relationships with the internet, because I've had, you know, I've made friends on Xbox Live, you know, as well. But when particularly you're making and stuff like that, it's just you need that to see people and to see their faces, to see how they play, because that's the other thing. Like I don't think most people are very good at giving feedback on a game, like with their mouths. They give the best feedback with what they do, and sometimes it's the body language, it's the subtleties of how they're behaving and reacting, and how they engage with each other. And then there's even just the simple things like, you know, generating buzz and momentum, because I think people think, oh, well, indie games are successful now, so now all you have to do is make a good game and then you get coverage. And it's like, no, it's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as that. Everyone tends to bandwagon things, so it's a small selection of games get all the coverage, and it's very hard to get like noticed outside of that. And you one of the only ways you can do that is by, like, you know, networking is the sort of crappy business term, but you know, you can make friends from that as well. It's not just all like handing each other things for your Rolodex, you know.
Yeah, but no, I think that's sometimes that word is too like sullied up, and it's not the case. Like you said, you can make friends from it. When we say networking, it's because people are passionate about games. So that's the key difference. It's not about trying to get something out of someone. It's about sharing that same passion with people. I think, yeah, that's how we should view networking. In my experience, by being real and honest with people, things like that, and treating them like human beings, and not just like going, oh, he's a designer for this company, so I'm going to sort of hang around him awkwardly and then ask some questions about where he works. Like, just to like be real with them, it can make a big difference, and you actually can learn a lot more that way, weirdly, you know, because people open up a bit more and it becomes a bit more sort of honest feelings and stuff. You don't just get the sort of company spiel or whatever. Yeah, man, I agree that just be you, and
unless you're an arsehole.
Then change a few things. You know, don't hide that. Change it. So, but right, man, we're gonna have to wrap this up. But it's been brilliant chatting to you. So before we do, though, tell people where they can pick up the game.
Yep, it's on Steam and itch. If you just search Ersatz, that's ERSATZ. You can also follow me on Twitter at allin_indie. There's also a website if you prefer to go there. It's just ersatzgame.com. And I've got Facebook. Just look for All In Indie as well. And if anyone ever wants to get in touch with me, ask me any questions or whatever, like, feel free to email me allin.indie@gmail.com.
Cool. I will have a link to all of that in the description down below, so in case you didn't remember that, I'll put it down there for you guys to check out. So thank you guys very much for joining me and Paris to chat about his game. It is worth going out and checking out. Also, buy the edition with the soundtrack, because the soundtrack is amazing. I'm not trying to milk you for money. You will listen to the game and want to listen to it outside, so I'm doing you a favour.
I don't know how I'm gonna handle all this positive comments.
I'll give you once we get off air, I'll tell you how bad you are. So don't worry. No, man. So thank you guys again for tuning in. If you want to get in contact with me, then please, for giving Paris such a hard time, then please do so at MaxPairs on Twitter. If you want to leave some feedback or comments, please do email them across leveldesignlobby@gmail.com, and please subscribe to let us know that we're doing a great thing and you want to hear more. I'm sure we'll bring Paris on
Yeah, definitely subscribe. You've got to subscribe to Max, and he definitely will listen to your feedback. He's one of the best people for that.
Oh, cheers, dude. Now you're making me blush. I'm sure we'll give each other a stick later. So, but again, thank you very much. Cheers, Paris, for joining me, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.